A report released this week shows 50% of the oil rigs in Colorado that were active last October are now idle. Colorado joins North Dakota and Oklahoma, who are also seeing major drops in production due to the low price of oil. And this is pretty common sense when it comes to supply and demand. If the price is low, you don't put out much production. However, at what point are we going to see it go from affecting the oil fields in Colorado to affecting the oil companies to affecting our economies and towns? I mean, Colorado's used to a boom and bust when it comes to energy, and we're more insulated nowadays, but there's going to be ramifications at some point. Are we beginning to feel them?
You're going in the exact right direction this conversation should be going in, but we're not seeing the sky falling in the same way. This report and others that have come out from oil companies that are talking about cutting back production have noted the 50% drop in rigs, but we're looking at more of a 15 to 20% cutback in most cases in jobs and in spending by these companies. I mean, just because you are idling rigs doesn't mean that you are sending everyone home who used to work on those rigs. You want to be able to go back to those if we see some spike in the oil prices pretty quickly. And not only that, you've got other things that people can do rather than just working out on those rigs right now. So I don't think we're going to see tremors in the economy just yet. I mean, obviously this is going to bring down the spending by some of these companies that are heavy capital spenders here in town and that own a significant amount of downtown Denver office space. That's another big thing, that if that were to happen, then that affects the whole downtown retail, restaurant economy, even the hotels as well. That's just not quite happening yet, though. And there will be, from what I've seen from multiple reports, there will be some uptick in the economy because people are spending less on gas. So I think this is worth watching, but it's not worth panicking about.
Susan, do you think this is how most Coloradans take a look at this? They're not panicking yet. They're enjoying the low gas prices. And do we have anything to worry about yet?
Well, they're enjoying the low gas prices at the pump themselves, and they're going to enjoy the low gas prices when people flock here because it's so cheap to take a road trip to Colorado because gas is so cheap this summer. So the economists have said there's a mitigating impact here, which is a boost in tourism. I think one question about this little slump or the drop in oil prices, and I shouldn't call it a slump because I love paying half price for my gas lately, is that it reminds us that, yes, in fact, we do have a boom and bust, and we know that better than most states. That's what we know from our history, and that raises some questions about our public policies. We have this very strong lobby and sentiment in Colorado not to regulate fracking. We have water problems in Colorado. Those are things that are exacerbated, obviously, by an increase in energy production or oil production. So I think people need to remember these busts when they're talking about those policy issues, especially regulation of fracking, because it's always painted as if there's a constant boom, and there's not. Our history tells us so.
Patty, do you think if it's not a bust, or at least the depression in the oil economy is going to affect the fracking argument this year?
Well, it gives us a little more time to speak up, talk about it in a less heated environment. People are not going to be out working every single rig, trying to get every possible drop up from the ground. So it does give us a little bit of a timeout, but we're nowhere near looking at the kind of bust, those of us who were here in 83, 84, and you would look through empty skyscrapers downtown when, whole floors of Republic Tower were completely closed off. We've got a less than a 10% vacancy rate for offices downtown, so a little cooling off period wouldn't be really horrible. Everyone's enjoying not paying as much at the pump. Maybe we can really have the kind of discussion we've talked about around this table so many times where we look at the real science of fracking.
David, wrap it up for us.
It was only 2008 when the professional hysterics were telling us that we were about to hit peak oil. And now we've got so much oil that the oil companies are practically having trouble giving it away. The idea that the country and the world is going to run out of oil has been going around since the early 1920s. They're proven wrong every time. We will never run out of energy as long as we do two sensible things. One, no price controls. Two, no inappropriate restrictions on the production of energy.
Let's get a quick take on this one. One of the key executives in charge of the building of the VA hospital in Aurora resigned this week after calls for his firing from many congressional officials. Representative Mike Kaufman is drafting a bill that would deny any bonuses to VA officials involved in the hospital until after it is completed. Susan, what's your quick take response to the resignation of the director of the construction?
Amen. Long overdue. And how this man, how you go from a cost or contracts of, I think it's $328 million for this medical center to $1.7 billion. How there's nothing criminal in that, I mean, that takes work. And I think that's the big question. I mean, Mike Kaufman has been all over this no bonuses issue, but I think people need answers. How did it jump 5 times as expensive, and really it's not even close to completion. It's kind of just stuck. So what's his name? Glenn, help me.
Hagstrom, yes.
Yeah, I think he should stay really far from Colorado and from our veterans for a long time, because that man's name, although I can't remember it, will live in infamy.
Patty, is Hagstrom's head just the first of many that you think will fall?
Well, he's not the first, because we had the regional person already retire conveniently like he did. We need to know what happened here. It's outrageous for taxpayers, but we also need to make sure that this greatest generation that needs this care has care, the care they deserve. These guys won the war. They built bridges. That get the Army Corps of Engineers in there and let them build the hospital. They could certainly do a better job.
David, what do you think?
Maybe a administration which can't even build a hospital shouldn't take over the entire rest of the U.S. healthcare system first before they learn how to do their core job of helping with the veterans. The hospital's not going to be around for a while. Until that hospital is completed, vets in Colorado ought to be given vouchers so they can go to the hospital of their choice rather than being shunted into a dysfunctional system.
Ed, finish up for us.
Hagstrom certainly seemed to be a problem from what I've read, but there are more underlying problems here. The fact that the designers and the builders of this hospital couldn't talk about things, the federal government really needs to look at getting rid of some of the levels of bureaucracy and regulation that have caused these problems, in addition to inefficient and ineffective bureaucrats.
Let's get to our favorite part of the show, Disgrace of the Week. Patty, as always, start us off.
Return to Boulder County, suddenly home of all the crazy crimes, including a 12-year-old who tried to kill her mother for taking away her iPhone. An iPhone is a privilege, not a right.
David.
We used to have leaders like Winston Churchill and Franklin Roosevelt, who, when they had personality conflicts with others, like Charles de Gaulle of France, who they all couldn't stand because he was an egomaniacal jerk, they could separate their personality clashes from other things. And unlike the current administration, which, because Obama and Netanyahu don't get along, the Obama administration is now publishing Israel's military secrets and putting that country on the front line of imminent nuclear genocide.
Ed.
There will be a lot of tributes that are coming out to Harry Reid's retirement, but let's not forget, this guy has been one of the main obstructionist problems why both Republicans and Democrats can't get anything done in the U.S. Senate. And it was, in fact, Reid's leadership that almost doomed Obamacare for all the people that love the liberal end of these things by refusing to make the compromises that could have put the bill through a lot more quickly before Ted Kennedy died. So I just want to get out early and say, hey, everyone's going to be saying, oh, Harry Reid was so great. I think both he and some other current leaders of the Senate need to move on a lot more quickly.
Susan.
Speaking of getting things done in the Senate, Senator Cory Gardner for promising that Republicans will have a solid alternative to Obamacare if King versus Burwell goes down, the court case goes down in court. I had a friend this morning liken it to promising people that the Great Pumpkin will come.
Well, the Great Pumpkin has to come quickly, and so do we when it comes to Say Something Nice. So say something nice very quickly.
Joyce Mescus of the Tattered Cover, who announced she has a deal that will keep the Tattered Cover, the 4 stores, going when she retires in 2 years.
David.
I was going to do the same one. What a great Denver person for founding such an outstanding institution.
Ed.
Patty Calhoun for putting out the most read newspaper of the year, another excellent edition of Best of Denver this year from Westward.
Hear, hear.
Nancy Lawfome, former reporter at the Denver Post, who's in Grand Junction. She's the diva of all things journalistic on the West Slope, is now writing for the Colorado Independent.
Very nice. That's all the time we have tonight, so thanks for tuning in. Remember that if you missed any part of the show or want to check out our web-exclusive segment, CIO Postgame, check out cpt12.org or YouTube. I also send out our takes via Twitter, so please feel free to follow me there. And you can also listen to our show as a podcast on iTunes, so be sure to check it out. For everyone here at Channel 12, I'm Dominic Dezzutti. Thanks very much for watching. Good night.